Got a stack of spare souls in my back row vault. They still got their names on them, still got their spark and fault. They look at me like family, not coins to burn away. I keep them in the light box, I don't hear what the prizes say. You call it a fair fight, I call it a cut. One more run for the trophies and you ask for too much. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna lose my side. Chasing prizes, chasing highs, cheap thrills don't get to decide. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna watch them die. Keep my extra Illuvials, keep my hands off the knife. Every time the arena glows, it tries to pull me in. Flashy banners, crowd noise, and a grin that feels like sin. But I know what the cost is. When the chat goes up, a little less of what I love, for a little more of luck. You call it a fair fight, I call it a cut. One more run for the trophies and you ask for too much. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna lose my side. Chasing prizes, chasing highs, cheap thrills don't get to decide. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna watch them die. Keep my extra Illuvials, keep my hands off the knife. If the world wants blood for a win, let it look somewhere else. I can live with being patient, I can keep what I helped build myself. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna lose my side. Chasing prizes, chasing highs, cheap thrills don't get to decide. I don't wanna sacrifice, I don't wanna watch them die. Keep my extra Illuvials, keep my hands off the knife. Out in the wild grass, you froze my breath. I saw you move like a living myth. Bright-eyed storm with the blade thin frame. I said your name like I knew that flame. You turned your head, I held my ground. No crowd, no crown, just that heart pound sound. I read your steps, you read mine too. One wrong move and the sky split blue. Then you came in close and you pulled away. I sent my drone on the edge of the fray. Your pulse ran hot, my hand stayed steady. One more hit and the shard was ready. I caught you, now you're mine to run with. I caught you, almost done. We learn together. We survive together. Ranger and Illuvium. Side by side we survive.
All right, hello, welcome everybody back to the stream. Looking forward to this one today. We're going to be doing something a little bit differently. Not touching the game whatsoever, but we're still going to be discussing it to vast degrees, including a little bit of theory crafting. I know personally, at least, I am a very, very big pusher, or one thing that I want to see in Illuvium, really, really badly, is some sort of breeding mechanic, being able to potentially get eggs and essentially hatch our own Illuvials. That is the one thing that's going to be the main discussion here for a little bit, but I do also want to go over the latest patch for Arena that did just drop. I don't want to wait till this week in Illuvium on Wednesday to cover it. I want to get to it right here, right now. So we'll start off with that here in just a second. Good to see everybody. Big Man JB, Kevin Hawthorne, good afternoon, good afternoon. Awake Darkness, good to see you as well, good afternoon. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day so far, and hopefully it just keeps on getting better for you. I'm not going to waste too much time here because I feel like we're going to spend a lot of time on our discussion later on today. So the first thing that we're going to cover, once again, is going to be this patch that did just drop not even a couple hours ago. I think it was like this morning that it did end up coming on through. It's patch 1.1711. Now, the main thing about this is balance changes. However, it may not be the biggest of patches in terms of the amount of changes, but the ones that are there are still extremely impactful. So I want to go over that nice and quickly here, but probably the biggest one right here, right now, is the one here in front of us. So we saw in the last patch with the stage 3 lynxes that they would, every time they fire off their Omega, they would buff themselves, depending on what kind of affinity that lynx was, right? Depending on what element. And it was nice, but it didn't, I don't think, have that impact that the devs were looking for, that the players were looking for. And now it's a little bit different. The lynx fully evolved now is more of a supportive unit because now all allies get the buffs that were originally associated with just the lynx themselves. So this is pretty crazy. So the Earth Lynxes now, every time they fire off their Omega, the Earth Lynxes will give physical resistance. The Water Lynxes will give energy regen to everybody. Fire will give everybody 1% base attack damage upgrades. Nature allies are going to all get health regen. This one scares the hell out of me, but I'm interested to see it still nonetheless. And then air units getting energy resistance every single time an Omega pops off. So there's actually a purpose now here for lynxes to come on through, especially if your team is meant to just sustain, meant to be tanky. I see a very tough time still trying to implement like a fully evolved lynx onto, say, a rogue team or a fighter team where it's heavy damage extremely quickly to the point where the lynx won't necessarily get as many Omegas off to truly get its use. But to something like a nature, something like granite with earth or something along those lines, maybe even air can sneak in there. Any of those heavy sustain compositions, I imagine stage 3 lynxes actually got a massive amount of priority now. But we'll have to see, of course. Big Man JB here in the chat. Tsunami got both a buff and a nerf. Excited to test. Water Lynx might be able to stack fast. Absolutely, potentially. Yeah, so there is maybe the world where the Water Lynxes could potentially, say, for my Invokers. Could that help them out? Considering I'm just a spellcasting team behind a bunch of Bulwarks, or a full 8-water team, that could be stacking up pretty quickly too. But we'll have to see. I don't think it'll be as crazy, but definitely looking forward to testing it out. But of course, that was not the only changes that did come on through here. Some Illuvials did get a slight tweak here in regards to the Tsunami Illuvials, because I was saying time and time again with Tsunami being so strong that it was never the fault of Axodon or Flood or Geyser. they were never the problem with the Tsunami composition. It was always the Tsunami chip that you can put onto whatever Illuvial you wanted. That was the problem. And I didn't want to see Tsunami nerfed, or I wanted to see Tsunami nerfed maybe ever so slightly to prevent, say, Kukulu stun locking somebody. But I didn't want to see Tsunami nerfed as well because I knew it would hurt Axodon and Flood and Geyser, and they already have a hard enough time. So what I'm imagining is coming up here in a second, we're seeing Axodon getting a bit of a buff here in regards to the Bubble Shield. We're going to see damage increase here by about 35 damage on its Omega. And then they did a little correction on their tooltip as well, so making it a little bit clear. And then trying to add more damage and healing here to the Flood and Geyser, make them stand out a little bit, because I don't use them very often because I feel like they're kind of a dead weight in the composition. They're just kind of a meat shield that just sits there, and that's basically it. Well, maybe now this will kind of put them a little bit more in terms of priority. If we replace the links, do we still have those perks? Because it's written permanently. In regards to this here, all allies permanently gain. I imagine this resets at the end of the round. I don't see this being a case of it being something that stacks throughout the entire match, because that would be bloody insane. So if you replace the links, I imagine you then lose said buffs. But if it is the other way, that'd absolutely be pretty crazy and would definitely be worth some testing. JB just covered it right here as well. Yeah, buffs are just permanent for the round. Yeah, exactly. Expected. Yeah, if you were to sell off your stage 3 links, or every single round. So if I'm at round 12 or whatever, and my links casted its Omega 3 times, if I then, or at the end of that round, it gets completely deleted and set reset. So you're starting from scratch every single round. So if you were to eventually sell off your links, it wouldn't be there to give its Omega buffs anymore. So then you wouldn't have the buffs whatsoever. The Ebb line as top damage dealers. That'd definitely be interesting to see. We've seen some occasions where Flood and Geyser were actually able to hit some top charts, like Big Man JB was saying. So this could be rather nice. We'll have to see. I would love to see some more carry Geyser, so to speak, and maybe change my mindset on it. I know I used to call TB Ruko, for example, a diving meat shield. I always thought of the Geyser as a standing still, like a Snorlax, just an absolute meat shield. But hey, maybe it can have a little bit more impact, so I'm looking forward to that. Some of the weapons got adjusted here as well, and we are going to see, so the Flame Warden Staff, this is your flame or your fire empath weapon. We're going to see the Ranger themselves get a little bit of additional health. The Omega cost, so how fast it comes out, is going to be quicker, and some Omega damage coming along as well, making the Omega hit a little bit harder, because while it does have a nice AoE, it never felt truly that impactful, so I'm curious to see how this ends up working here. The Shadow Maul, so that is the Earth Empath weapon that you would a lot of times see with Earth Mystic. We're going to see the attack speed go up ever so slightly, while the Omega cost going down ever so slightly, so the slightest of tweaks here to the Shadow Maul. The Ember Buckler, that is your Fire Bulwark weapon. We are going to see its Omega cost come down rather considerably, and then Omega damage going up pretty nicely as well, from 575 to 650, to try to make that weapon a little bit crazier. I know over the last couple of patches, they've been trying to make the power fantasy of the Ranger on the battlefield making an impact, trying to improve that. And there were some weapons that did it much, much better than others. And one type of weapon that was always falling behind were the bulwarks. So I'm curious to see if we find any more coming on through here. Try to make the tanks just a little bit better. Emberling Rod, my precious. So the Omega cost is going to come out a little bit quicker, and this makes me ecstatic. Fixed an issue that could prevent the second bloom from triggering. Now, if we can only get the fix to allow it to trigger in the first place, that would be fantastic. But this is a great start to actually getting the Emberling Rod into the right place. Because the inconsistency of Emberling Rod had it so down. I know I had made a little bit of a tier list on Discord as to my thoughts on the weapons. And I had Emberling Rod at the very bottom, not because it didn't have good damage, because it has great damage when it works. But it just never really worked consistently, so hopefully this is a step in the right direction. Fire Shield is going to be the new top stun weapon, and considering that is for a Bulwark class, that doesn't bother me. That is an interesting way to play it out, because that Ranger should not necessarily have that much damage, but it has Disruption, and that is very valuable still. The Quake Maulers, that's going to be your rogue earth weapon. We're going to see the shield that comes out on Omega be a little bit stronger. Additional 100 Omega power onto that one. And then, or Omega shield rather. And then the physical resistances that gets shredded every attack goes up by 2. The Sylphid Blade, this is the water fighter weapon that you would normally associate with a mud team. Their damage for the longest time did feel very negligible. Like, I never worried about a Mud Ranger or the Sylphid Blade Ranger, like, ever. And now they're going to try and put a little bit more damage into that weapon, while also slowing down the attack speed of the other, the opponent just a little bit more. So hopefully the Sylphid Blade could have a little bit more of an impact here on this one. The Ember Bastion, the Earth Bulwark weapon, we're going to get the reflected energy damage going up by 10. Not a weapon I don't think we see that often, but we'll see if that makes a difference there. Then the Sprout Guard. Very cautious about this weapon, of course. There are some augments that do allow for that Omega Shield to get to some absurd levels, but after just getting nerfed in the last patch, we're going to buff it back up again, it looks like rather considerably, where the raw Omega Shield is going to go up. A little bit of a change to the weapon amplifiers here as well. 2 buffs to the arrow edge. We're going to see the tankier and the DPS side of things of those amplifiers coming on through. The Cyclone Wake in particular, that's the tankier variant of the Air Fighter Sword, going to see the physical resistance go up from 10 to 20%. Then the Razor Squall, that's the DPS variant, we're actually going to see their Omega damage go up pretty significantly. So trying to make that arrow edge not just a synergy filler anymore, trying to make it so you actually have to worry about that Ranger maybe ever so slightly. The Bramble Patch. Now, Earthgrass Scepter has probably got the most buffs across all of these weapons, if I do recall correctly. We are seeing, what, 4 different, actually, augments getting buffed, which all open up different playstyles, which is cool to see. The Bramble Patch, that's just for raw damage. We're going to see an increase. The Crippling Roots, where you're going to actually increase... you're going to tear away resistances from all the enemies hit. Again, remember with the Earthgrass Scepter, this thing shoots out three shots, and it goes all the way to the furthest enemies, but does damage and shreds resistance on everything that it passes. So, Earthgrass Scepter having a 20% resistance reduction could be the perfect kind of scenario. So you cast this off and then maybe have your, your Scions then take the shots right afterward and hit them while that resistance is lowered. That looks actually really cool to me. Ensnaring Vines being able to silence. Now, I always find this a little bit redundant because the raw effect of the Earthgrass Scepter does actually do a rooting effect, which does interrupt at least. The silence is just to kind of slow it down from a potential cast if you're sitting there at full Omega charge. But we are going to see a small increase from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. And then the Shattering Spines, we're going to see some additional Omega power go its way. So you have 2 ways that you can play this Earthgrass Scepter now. It's going to be either a supportive disruptor kind of style, or you can have very high DPS on this. Because again, depending on where you position that Ranger, you could hit multiple targets, which would be really nice. The Ember Bastion, alongside the buff that it got for its the raw weapon, we're going to see a weapon augment upgraded here as well. when you're increasing the reflected energy damage, it's going to go up to 50. It was 35. The Grove Sword, the nature fighter weapon, don't necessarily see too often unless you're thinking maybe some sort of toxic or just going for a mass nature build. We're actually putting a ton of Omega damage onto this one now in that augment. The crushing momentum, big power spike now up to 1,100, was 900. The Lava Gauntlet also getting a handful of changes here, based off of a handful of different augments. The Energy Catalyst, where you're getting Omega power every single time you use your Omega, that's going to be going up by 15 actually, so 35 Omega power every single time you cast. So a snowballing fire-based kind of squad could very well come into effect. Now the Magma Intensifier, where it's just the raw Omega damage increase, going to see a 150 damage increase onto that one. And then the Consuming Flames, where you're able to use max health as pure damage, we're seeing a 5% increase on that as well. So Lava Gauntlet getting a lot of love here in this patch. Kirito, good to see you. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Overall, looks like a good patch. Will be interesting to see what they end up doing with the Lynxes. Absolutely. It could... I know we're kind of theory crafting a little bit on it a little bit earlier, but it seems like there's going to be some compositions where it could be a bit of a runaway. Like, I'm really worried about tanky compositions that will just snowball more over time as that Lynx gets more and more buffs in every single round. But we'll have to see. We actually have to test that out first. The Ripple Flail is going to get a small buff, or actually a pretty considerable buff here, but only to one of the augments that wasn't really used at all. I don't see very many people use the Energy Erosion, where you're actually just draining energy from your opponent on the empowered attacks. 25 did make a small difference, but you would still be able to power through and charge your Omega pretty safely. With the energy burns being upgraded up to 40, that is going to make things rather interesting. So as long as you have that empowered attack online, you might be able to truly stop any Illuvial from getting its cast off. And I'm curious, if you try to do energy erosion with Tsunami, are you going to be able to completely stop an Illuvial firing off their Omega? That could be a new form of utility in that regard. We'll have to see. I want to test that out. For the Sprout Guard, the Petal Detonation, so getting these splash damage on the shield expiry. Then we're going to see a buff for the shield itself, as well as the damage going up by a pretty considerable margin here, from 400 up to 550. Then last but not least here for the weapons, so the Maelstrom, the Tidal Shiv, which I'd argue was already a pretty good weapon, is actually getting some more attack damage every time it fires off its Omega. So this I'm going to be very much so keeping an eye on. If Aqua Blaster was being seen as one of the best weapons in the game, I could see a world where the Tidal Shiv is right close behind it, because the Tidal Shiv already has been able to blow up a lot of Illuvials. As a spellcaster, I've definitely been on the receiving end of this one, especially since the Ranger is so damn thin compared to the other Illuvials and other creatures on the battlefield, that it can slip into those hard-to-reach spots and essentially just chunk my carries. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one in particular, so I can see that being really, really good. We have a couple changes to the suits here as well. So the Dimensional Ambush, where you jump immediately on the other side and try to take something out before returning. We're going to see an attack speed buff and the post-return attack damage buff going up by 25% for the attack speed, 15% on the damage. Echoes of the Fallen, where every single time one of your allies falls, your Ranger gets stronger. Probably one of them, I don't want to call it useless, but the least impactful Ranger suits that I've at least felt personally, is going to see a buff where you're going to get 2 Omega power and 2 more damage per fallen ally. The Staggering Strike, where you intentionally neuter your attack speed so that every single one of your auto attacks does, I think it's max HP based damage as well as stunning. we're going to actually get a little bit quicker. It's not going to be a 40% attack speed penalty anymore. It will be 30%. Then last but not least here for the suit changes, the explosive tempo. This one's been popular just because you're able to get your attack speed up very crazy levels the longer you can keep that ranger alive, not to mention the explosion damage every couple of attacks, and we're going to see a small reduction in regards to the scaling for that explosion from 100% to 80%. So the explosion will hit a little bit less hard, but I mean, you're still going to be swinging quickly. So I think it's still probably a good suit. Changes to augments here as well. The Disruptive Force Reactor basically has no attack damage left. If you want to go for True Sight with ramping up the attack speed, you are paying a big price in regards to the amount of damage that you're doing. So Disruptive Force Reactor from 10% attack damage when you put on Illuvial down to 5%. The Piercing Force Reactor is going to continue to get its max health, pure damage, get shredded. We saw it get shredded in the last patch, and now it's going to be the exact same here, all the way down to 1%. Then last but not least, the Phase Breaker. So this thing, of course, being able to go untargetable at, I believe it was 40% health, and you basically have this as a must pick for any of your melee carries. Heck, you would even throw it on some of your tanks as well, that you just want to see get more stuns off. But there was really no penalty because you're still getting some pretty decent amount of stats. We saw them nerf this in the last patch. Did pretty decent, but the Phase Breaker was still very prominent. And sure enough, we're going to see another nerf here to it, where we're going to go down from 5% health and attack damage all the way down to 4. Quickly checking in here with the chat. So, it'd be nice if you could choose the links. What about changing it so you only need to fuse? The total of 6 might be a little bit busted, I'm not going to lie, but I'm absolutely always more interested in player choice actually making an impact. Personally, I wish, if we cannot get the true real Ascendant, I wish that we can intentionally pick what middle stage links we want, which fully evolved links we want by affinity and class, and I also wish that we can pick our tier 0s. I wish that I could have my Nature Tipo with me every single game. I wish I could have my Nature Fleesh every single game. I wish I could have my Fire Grocko or whichever ones that I happen to want at that time based off the team I want to build. If I can't team build my entire team, I wish I could at least pick the ones that are seen as random right now. I wish that we can pick our tier 0s and pick our Lynxes 100%. Couple of synergies got changed, and I think this one is a little bit to be expected because we did see the buffs towards Axodon and the Ebb, Flood, and Geyser. Water is going to be receiving a nerf essentially to every single threshold where the team energy regen's going down, and then of course the water specific will be short to follow as well. Just been getting their Omegas very quickly, and the charge of, or getting your Omega faster than your opponent, that's the entire idea behind water. But some of the effects are maybe a little bit being abused, so to speak. So, water coming down at least a little bit. Some of these instances, it's actually, like, very minuscule. Like, the first couple of levels, it's not too crazy. I mean, it's actually just, like, 0.2 and 0.5 energy regen, so it's not huge hits. It's just little hits across the board. Bulwarks, they're going to be giving a little bit more resistances to their team right off the rip, and one thing I'm noticing already, even just getting a single bulwark, going from 5 resistances to 10, that's kind of considerable considering how easy that is to hit. Up to 3 bulwarks, so you can potentially get 15 resistances instead of 10. If you go all the way up to 5, though, we're going to see the rather minuscule increase, though, from 18 to 20. But early game bulwarks are actually, again, just getting a bit of a buff there. Checking in with the chat. Easy fix to that. Change the UI to show what tier 0 and links. and change them before or until round 3 potentially, I'd just set it in the team planner. Like, if that was possible, or do it that way as well. Yeah, JD saying water is still my go-to. Yeah, this change is not enough to convince me that water is going to be devastated. So, it should be still good, in my opinion. Colossus is going to be getting a buff, but those things are about as much of a mystery of actually finding on the battlefield. That is... Excuse me. How do I want to word this? Colossus are almost as rare as actually trying to figure out what staking V3 does. It is an absolute mystery. That alongside the gems in Illuvium 0. Colossus, it does... people say it exists, but I never ever actually see this thing. We are going to see a buff to it, though, across the board, considering, again, how hard these units are actually to hit. Colossus being strong is definitely a good thing, in my opinion, and a little bit of a tooltip fix there as well. Perfect. Mystics, of course, they got absolutely neutered. I think it was 2 patches ago, back when everybody was spamming Earth Mystic or Granite Mystic like crazy. And with that, they fell off a cliff. They are going to get a little bit of their power back, it looks like. 1% at every single threshold. Slayer's going to be getting a buff. I don't say that very often. We're going to see attack speed and attack damage going up by 10% at early stages. 15 at the 3rd stage, and then if you could somehow actually get a chip to get that final stage for Slayer, we'll see a 20% attack speed and damage buff. That would be pretty fun. I definitely would love to try that and watch my gyro go nuts. A couple of the final changes here. Predator, improving its execution pressure with the empowered attacks. So we're going to be seeing the execute threshold. So how much health your opponent has to have before the execute damage actually happens, that's coming out a little bit quicker, which is very nice to see. Get some of those additional bonus damage shots, those empowered attacks, a little bit quicker. And it's going to be going up, of course, depending on which threshold you happen to hit. But 2% early, 3% in the middle stages for the natural Predator. Then if you want to get Ranger involved, you can start executing things at 20%, which is extremely high. Nice to see. Empowered attack damage themselves. So how much damage are these execution attacks going to do? We're going to see actually a very considerable buff here to these Predator Illuvials. From 175 at the early stages to 225. From 250 to 325. And 450 compared to the 375. So I actually think Predator might not just be a pivot point anymore for rogues. It might be actually worth it to stick with them a little bit longer. So it's not going to, I think, dissuade players from going Vanguard. Vanguard is still king. But Predator is not just a happy afterthought, so to speak. I think you genuinely now want to hit this, force yourself to hit this, and then go for Vanguard later. Behemoth is going to see a slight reduction across the board here. The max health gained going down by 1% in the early and mid stages. If you manage to get the 4 Behemoth, though, that will be a 3-point reduction in health. And then max health as physical damage, allowing those tanks to do some serious damage. Similar scenario, just 1% at 1st and 2nd stage. But if you somehow manage to get 4 Behemoth, you need a chip for that. And we're going to see a significant 3-point reduction there. Looks super strong when it's that easy to get. I mean, that's Rogue in a nutshell, right? So that is going to be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks here in the arena. Now the one we knew was coming. We are going to see Tsunami get a nerf here. We're going to get the repeated Omega acceleration. So the amount of energy you get refunded to you after using your Omega the first time, we are going to see a considerable swing across the board. 10% of your energy that you would have been refunded will be taken away. But in terms of the damage and the healing attached to, the splash damage that's on all thresholds, and then the Tsunami 4 healing, all that's left alone. So it's just the energy refund, And again, that wasn't due to the fault of Axodon, Flood, and Geyser. I think that is due to the issue of the Tsunami chip being put onto other Illuvials and giving Tsunami to Illuvials that don't naturally have it. I know the one that always comes up into my mind is when I put a Tsunami chip on a Fisto, and I had 3 or 4 Tsunami. I had lightning raining the entire time, whether I got a reset or not. It was kind of incredible. It was really fun, but it was busted as hell. So I'm kind of happy to see that Tsunami, the synergy itself, got a nerf, while Axodon and Flood and Geyser got some love. Last but not least, the Verdants. They got themselves a pretty significant healing nerf across the board here, it looks like. So 5% on the early stages and the second stage, just 5% on every single stage. For the self-healing, how it would always take your max health into consideration. You get that Verdant Illuvial very, very low, then all of a sudden they're full health again. That's what that's going to be nerfing there. The flat zone healing I always found very, very minuscule, but it's still going to be taking a small hit here, 5 health per second. And then when you do manage to get Verdant 4, if you happen to get a chip, then there's going to be a slight reduction in regards to max HP. Catching up with chat here, let's see. Looks super strong when it's that easy to get. Yep. Just 2 tier 1 stage 2s, 100%. Yeah, you can easily get Greater Gorilla and Chocoral super, super easily. I wonder, though, if maybe that can put a little bit of an extra push onto its final forms. What happens with Exalted Gorilla and, say, Chicondi? Since they already hit relatively hard, I'm curious as to how that'll behave there. Silver Bushman, good to see you. Hope you're having a fantastic day, of course. Don't go over level 8 and just build quick, basically. Yep, that's Rogue in a nutshell. Sota is probably going to be happy with his rogues again. They have a lot to be happy about, I think, since the nerf to Inferno, Arcanite, and Nature, and Mystics. Still haven't been able to get a Tsunami chip for a while. JB, your luck is easily some of the worst I've seen in the game. It's right there next to Hector, I think, in terms of hitting the Illuvials and the chips you want. That's definitely brutal. And yeah, if we were basing this off of other thresholds, normally if we see... let me think. Let's just compare it to Vanguard. Vanguard has one Illuvial and has the Stabin, right? That you can get the Vanguard as its middle stage evolution. But then to get Vanguard on the other one, onto Malura, that's a fully evolved Illuvial. And you see that similarly with Aegis. Like, you can get Aegis really quickly with Archos. But if you want to get the other Aegis, you need Blotto, which is a fully evolved Tier 3. And then there's just Rogue and Predators that apparently you can get both the Predator buffs just off of a Tier 1 Stage 2. It is extremely easy to hit, and I think that we might be kind of stupid to just not include it onto our teams early. Just for the heck of it. We'll see. It'll take some practice. But that'll be it for the patch notes for the time being. Again, I'm very excited and very happy and thankful to the Illuvium developers, Perry and the rest of the squad, for taking Illuvium Arena under their wing and getting us frequent updates for balance and meaningful updates, not just number tweak go here, but even seeing things like the Lynxes, where their value was absolutely missing, but giving them new effects to actually make them worthwhile. So thank you to all the devs making that happen. It is incredible. And even when there is no balance patches, the fact that they just say, yeah, there's not going to be a patch this week because we're still collecting data. That's incredible. Thank you for the transparency. I've been missing that since the start of 2026 across all of Illuvium. So I'm very, very happy to hear it from Arena devs now. Shoutouts to them. All right, the main topic that I want to go through here today. So it's no secret that I want some sort of breeding system in Illuvium. I want there to be a way where I can take either some of my pre-existing resources and Illuvials to be able to hatch my own Illuvials. That's what I'm talking about. If you're thinking of some other sort of some other sort of breeding system, you can go look to Power World for that. But that's not what I'm talking about here for this. So I'm talking about basically being able to get your own egg of an alluvial that you specifically sought out to hatch. That is a system that I do want in Illuvium desperately. It is something that we do see one way or another across pretty much every other creature collector that is out there. So with that, I want to do basically a brainstorm as to how we would design this if it was just us. And something along the lines of like how we can make it work, so to speak. I'm not a developer. But what I can do is just figure out like what each system would affect each kind of player. How could we possibly do this? I don't, again, know the technical possibilities. But I want to try and help out with this if possible. And at least give like a brief idea of how we would do this. Yeah, Silver Bushman calling out fusing, and that's a thing. Because as a part of like every other breeding in any other game, you don't kill the parents to breed. That's pointless. So we are going to do this in the most technologically fanciest way that I can possibly think of. Flashbang warning, it's going to be my damn spreadsheet. So okay, let's bring this down into some sort of breakdown here. Awake Darkness. There's specific banks for that. Jesus Christ. Yeah, exactly. All right. So first off, what am I talking about in regards to breeding? So I am referring to a system where you pick, or a system where you pick the creature that you want to get a baby form of said creature, if that makes sense. Okay. You want, then get an, or I'm going to say an, it wouldn't have to necessarily be an egg either. Let's see. A new creature from the same species. Yeah, the birth of the phoenix of sorts. That can definitely be one idea of it. So here's what I want to go over. Who would benefit? Like, what kind of players do we have here in Illuvium right now? Because there is, obviously, like, let's see, what kind of players do we have? Of players could be playing Illuvium. So there's Arena. For competitive PvP. And by all means, call out stuff that I would be missing here. I want this to be the perfect idea of a community discussion, so to speak. Combining alluvial with an egg to potentially get a higher stage, like using that as the evolution for it. That'd be interesting. Yeah, like who could use this? So we've got here, I'll switch that up here. So kind of players, there's arena players, there's going to be not just MMO players, but I want like the specific type of play style. We have completionists. Or living decks players. We have crafters. Collector exploration. Good one, JB. Okay. Dungeon / raiders. Okay. Let's see. How would Beyond somehow use this? Let's go through the rest of our games here. How would Deathmatch get involved? How does Zero players get involved? And then I'm going to try and think of in a second here what each of these players would use the system for. Some sort of metamorphosis does actually sound like something that would be right down Illuvium's alley, so I kind of like that idea. The team builder. A team builder and tester. Would that be for Obelisk Rising, or would that be for Arena? Or does it even matter? Might not even might not even matter. Speaking of Obelisk Rising, so we can just say general playthrough for Obelisk Rising. Some people that are just kind of like casually going through. How could they utilize breeding? Okay. I don't think if I had any other ideas in mind here. For both, okay. That works. If you can think of any additional ones, please do let me know. So I'll gladly go through that as well. So arena players, what would you be using breeding for? Optimally, getting high TPI Illuvials. Through already obtained resources. Completionists or the living dex players potentially using breeding to help complete their Illuvidex. If they happen to have maybe caught a Jokel or a Jotun or something along those lines, but they haven't caught a mule yet, maybe you can do it that way. How would crafters utilize breeding? Do they even? Probably not naturally, unless somehow... Nah, I don't know if they can naturally use this. Yeah, no effect naturally. For explorers... Again, no natural effect there, but what if... What if you can find an egg in the wild? The full POW world on. Maybe that could work? Alrighty, big man, have a great day. Dungeon and Raiders, similar scenario here to Arena players, I do believe, getting high TPI Illuvials through already obtained resources for competitions. Illuvium Beyond would not have an effect naturally unless... One second here. All right. So Illuvium Beyond, if you just think of how Illuvium Beyond's been handled as of the first little bit, it's always just been a picture of the Illuvial themselves, right? Their face or something along those lines. But what if for Illuvium Beyond, if somehow maybe you hit a certain achievement of sorts, that maybe you would unlock an Illuvitar that, say, like, has a monarch holding an egg. Or, like, Kookaloo sitting on a nest or something like that. Not make it just so that Illuvitars are strictly art of the face of the Illuvial, but actually let the artists make Illuvitars that are scenarios. That, I think, would be kind of interesting. Deathmatch, I mean, this one I feel like is pretty obvious. Just extra Illuvials for the slaughterhouse. So deathmatch players would want it in that regard. 0 players would love to have this if breeding was a part of the city. Added utility if somehow 0 was able to have breeding farms. And team builders, I imagine something similar to what we would do here. And then for general playthroughs for Obelisk Rising, it would probably be something along the lines of the exploration, or breeding the complete Illuvidex, but also the bond system. Getting more Illuvials so that you can, I don't want to use the word fuse because that's something completely different into the Illuvium universe. But using breeding to get more Illuvials that you could then pump into the Illuvial you want to bond with. That'd potentially be a way that we can use it for Obelisk Rising. So now, how would we actually do the breeding system itself? So if we look at, say, something like Pokemon, it is 1 male, 1 female. Then it's based off of the amount of steps you do, if I recall correctly. Count steps to produce an egg. Feed them after midnight, yeah. Count steps to produce an egg. Receive egg. And then count steps to hatch. It's something along those lines for Pokemon, right? Then I'm also going to put Pal World in here because it's another one I'm rather familiar with. And it's basically the same idea. 1 male, 1 female. Real-time waiting to produce an egg. You receive egg. Then it's real-time waiting to hatch an egg with environmental factors. That determine speed. Environmental factors and rarity determine speed of hatch. Yeah, Pokemon with the steps, exactly as you're saying there, Wick Dark. The steps idea was cool so that you just can't AFK, and AFK if it's calculated by hour. I have a 3DS with a quarter shoved in its joystick area that I can then just leave overnight and gain experience or get hatches on. I'm a VGC player. I've abused the hell out of certain mechanics, okay? But that is the intention behind it, yes. There's always going to be a workaround, but that is the intention. And then, like, what are some of the good and bad here of these systems? So, anti-AFK. And I'll get there in a second. So, if we were to do this with Illuvium, you have 2, eh? Okay, gotcha. Ghost Mouse, pretty much, yeah. Okay, so how... with these current systems 1-to-1, what is going to be the problem here for Illuvium? First and foremost, Illuvials aren't gendered. So the idea of having one male and one female, that is not going to end up working. Not in the slightest. Then in terms of producing an egg, there is currently no system in place. For essentially everything here in this instance here. Let's see. One other thing that I also need to take into consideration, as much as this pains me, because for Pokemon it doesn't matter. Power World, it doesn't matter. Supply factor for Illuvium. What about the value of my collection? Crying face, rage face. Okay, so the Web 3 factor. So that's always going to be the biggest problem about trying to implement breeding into Illuvium, because when the supply factor doesn't matter whatsoever, then it's a benefit to the entire player experience. Like, produce as many as you want. With no issue. But then for Illuvium, everybody's going to get their pitchforks out. So, how do we actually get this to happen then for Illuvium? We could try to play similarly off of what Pokemon and Power World have done. So say 2 Illuvials doesn't... Well, there is no gender, so it doesn't matter. 2 Illuvials placed in a location designated for breeding and making an egg. An egg. So how could we do it this way? There could be either... Or there is no gender way to do this. So optimally, the most player-friendly way that we could do this would just be placing those 2 in there for making an egg. Parents never die. Egg is produced in real time. Because I don't think there's any other mechanic in the game for Illuvium where it actually tracks or needs to track your steps. And I would not want Illuvium to have to go develop a system just for one mechanic. Yeah, Wake Darkness, you and I might be on almost the exact same page. We'll see in a second. So egg is produced in real time. Egg is gathered and hatched. How would we hatch this? Because again, there's no steps, so just do it in real time as well. The egg is gathered and hatched in real time. And this can be done either in player's party or in separate incubator, or hatches at the breeding location. Because there's a few ways you can do this. The more intimate way is to have that egg in your party, and then, say after a couple hours or what have you, the egg hatches. Or not even necessarily a couple hours, maybe... We'll see. We'll see about the time can be disputed, but the idea would be that it's being held for you. Because for me personally, with all the creatures, as much as the rest of the community and a lot of the community like to see Illuvials as just completely disposable, to me, what makes or breaks the creature capture is how attached you get to said creatures to make you want to come back. So being able to take care of something, like say in player's party, if you have the egg on you, and the first moments of that Illuvial hatching, or whatever creature it happens to be for whatever game, it hatches in your party, it took some space out of your party, so it's an inconvenience for you to carry it. But because you went through that effort, you then now have your own new pal, or your own new Pokemon, or your own new Illuvial. In the inconvenience, there's something special there in terms of working for something and making it yours. So at least personally, this is be my choice. Now the only issue, again, what's wrong with this system? Okay, so actually, what's good with this system and what's wrong with the system? What's good? Intimate. Player friendly. And flexible. What's wrong with this system? Because we wouldn't be killing off the parents, there is a form of never-ending loop of producing Illuvials, which in any other creature collector game would be perfectly fine and player-friendly, but because this happens to be in a Web3 space, it's going to piss people off. Which pisses me off. Because 100%, if it was just something as simple as this, what I'd end up doing is probably having something through... Oh, that's actually another topic here. Hang on. In regards to the location. For the location of the breeding area. I know in Pokemon, it's a daycare. Pal World, it's whatever your base happens to be. When it was in Pokemon, you would unlock the breeding station or the daycare around the middle of the game, like the early mid-game, so to speak. You wouldn't be able to get it immediately. But then with Power World, again, it's attached to your base, but you don't get the resources needed to make that breeding station until about the mid-game. So, the problem is like, let's think of the locations that we have right now. We have Sanctum Mesa, right? But optimally, you're probably getting here right away. So you would either need an arbitrary blockage. We'll call it a progression block. Because there could be, again, since we're worried about flooding the ecosystem with Illuvials, the worst case scenario for players that care about this would being able to multi-account and be able to mass produce Illuvials. Because even if you can only do, say, one daycare or one Illuvial couple at a time, getting one egg at a time. If you're able to get it early game and just mass farm it, heck, even if this was done... I mean, there's still problems, actually. Still problems if free to use in all stages of the game. Because then there's always going to be the cry about what about bots, right? Now, I'm of the mindset that just because the bots can do something doesn't mean the entire player base should be punished for it. There are core mechanics that need to be a part of this game. And just because a bot can abuse it doesn't mean, like, we should exclude it, so to speak. Because what I'd be worried about is, say you get into the mid-game of the Illuvium story or something, and then the breeding farm becomes available through Obelisk Rising. There's nothing saying that you still can't just multi-account and spam it. Especially if it's just a matter of using the in-game currency or something along those lines to be able to function with that ability, or function with that building. Now, there are other options, though. There very well could just be something through the Illuvidex, where it's auto-drone-esque, where you just select two parents, and get egg / hatch X time later. There is a way that you could potentially just do this right out of the damn Illuvidex. However, if there... Let's see, this would be... I'm not trying to make an equation here. Whoopsie. This variant would be very... for lack of a better term, it would be lame as hell. It would be very intimate. I'm not even sure if this is a word, but you'll know what I mean. It doesn't feel special. It doesn't feel good. It just feels rushed. It feels like a transaction. There's nothing special about the Illuvial that comes out, not in the slightest. The issue again for this one would be multi-accounting. Tax the ID. Catch up with you guys here. Almost like find an egg hatching in the wild. Get to the same age, bring them. There's definitely a bunch of ways that could potentially do this here, for sure. Deathmatch can solve the problem, but now they've put a threshold. I mean, Deathmatch is Deathmatch. Gamba is Gamba, and by no means, I want Obelisk Rising to take absolutely nothing into consideration about Illuvium Deathmatch to make this game. There should not be anything that Deathmatch has exclusive to proceed in Obelisk Rising. For those that want to do it where Obelisk Rising you can catch the Illuvials and send them the Deathmatch, You want to do that? By all means, go ahead. But I never, especially let's say for someone like myself, I have my sons. I never want, say, if I was doing the breeding process, if breeding was somehow done through deathmatch, for example, I would not want my kids to go on a gambling website to get to use a feature that should be a core function of a creature capture. That would piss me off to no end, and that would actually cause me to never let them play the game if they wanted to, or completely take away that system. Like I think deathmatch and auto drone runs should be closed before that. That part's fine. That's not a problem. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about other systems. Okay. Now the other location, we kind of touched on this in chat a little bit. Zero Land. So how would we do this here? Say a specific building for breeding and hatching. And possibly hatching, actually. Because we then do it here. So a specific building for breeding and possibly hatching. However, get egg, or excuse me. So there's two ways that we can do this here. Because again, for the sake of the what's wrong with this system here for the because I have to keep supply in mind. As much as it would be super player friendly to not have to worry about how many Illuvials we're putting into the system, again, this is Web 3, so people are going to be very picky about this stuff. So, the player friendly way would be to take 2 Illuvials, place them in facility to make egg. But what's going to end up happening, and problem, endlessly supplying Illuvials. So specific feeding for hatching. So then how do we fuel this? And I think oddly enough, that's probably the answer. Zero's fuel. Funds the creation of the egg. So not the fuel that you would buy from the Illuvidex, but the stuff that we're all hoarding right now because there's nothing better to do. We would be using the Krypton and the silicon, crazy crystal stuff, the hydro, whatever the heck you want to call it. Let's use that stuff. The stuff that you would use for your buildings, for the research labs, and the scanner. Let's use that to fuel the Zero Land. This way, it's going to be rough off the start because we have nothing better to do with our land, so we're just hoarding. But what this does allow is kind of gating how much is produced at once, if that makes sense. Fail rate feels bad. I don't agree with fail rate. At least personally. I mean, I get what you're getting at, though. Hang on a second. Again, I'm thinking of strictly the player perspective here. There is absolutely nothing fun about, say, waiting a certain amount of time and paying your dues for the fuel. Like, say how the blueprint system is right now. Or the scanner system right now. It feels like shit, to be completely honest with you. Like, I'm putting my fuel in to scan for biodata. or I'm scanning for a blueprint, and it fails over and over and over again, and it actually genuinely gates my progression. I wish it was just fuel gets spent, it eventually turns into biodata or blueprints. But I don't mind if it takes a little bit longer to happen. So let's say here, let's get this written down. So the amount of fuel limits how much is made at once. But what if, because you need a reason to log into 02, right? Because you need a reason to log into 0. So what if you paid your fuel and we made it so that it will produce an egg anywhere between 1 hour and 3 days. Instead of introducing fail, introduce anticipation. You know you're gonna get it, but when and how fast? Because this as well, you want to find a reason to implement notifications into mobile users for Illuvium 0. Tell you what, nothing would make me more happy than seeing, hey, your so-and-so just hatched. Or even if there is no notifications, think of something along the lines where if it's between an hour, maybe I'm checking back in with my land every couple of hours, because in a best case scenario, let's say I'm going full deathmatch degen and I'm just trying to get as many Illuvials as possible. Like, there could be a world where maybe I get a little bit lucky and I get an egg after 1 hour. And I already have an Illuvial, I can start my next one right now. And if you get really lucky, maybe you can get a bunch of hatches all at once. Well, not all at once, but like within a day. But it could go up to, say, like 1 day or 2 days. This is obviously just arbitrary. We can very well change the amount, but that's the idea. Give me a reason to keep checking back. And then instead of having... Or what happens when we actually get the egg itself here? Let me check up with chat here while I think about this. We need female versions. That's the awkward thing here as well. It would just have to be 2 Illuvials, because I'm not going to force Illuvium to then design a gender system into the game just for this. So it'd have to be supplying Illuvials. But if even that... Okay, now I'm going into 2 directions at once here. Let me try and complete one idea at a time. This would be 2 Illuvials, place them in the facility to make the egg. Here, move that over for a second. Pay your fuel. Produce an egg anywhere from 1 hour to 3 days. We could either then, when you get the egg shows up as already done. So I'm thinking something similar to what we would see with the blueprint system, where we just click, or the biodata, for example, we would just click the we'd click on the breeding facility and then it would say, hey, Foe is here, or something along those lines. It's less intimate, but you at least have the surprise factor that, yes, they are there, kind of thing. Or receive the egg hatches through gameplay in Obelisk Rising, or through, rather, game time playing in Obelisk Rising. So similar to what Silver Bushman just said here. But then there is still going to be the problem. So this is still, again, just going off of Zero Land. Again, this is my pick no matter what. I believe wholeheartedly that Zero Land should be the primary source of breeding. Because for the good with this current system, brings purpose to owning Illuvium Zero Land. Utilizing things that we've already done. Through fuel. Let's see. Because it's through fuel, it's not an endless supply. Or rather, fuel gates how many Illuvials can be made. Yeah, fuel gates how many can be made at a time, and I would imagine you'd have every breeding farm, say, breeding farm only holds one egg at a time, or one pair at a time. And then if somebody was really interested... Oh, I'm so stupid. What kind of players would want to be playing Illuvium? Hello. The breeder finds pleasure supplying Illuvials to others. Duh. So people who really enjoy this playstyle can go nuts. For lack of a better term, I'll call it an empire, but like players that genuinely like really enjoy breeding creatures can build their lands to help maximize the amount of eggs that they happen to be getting. But if they were to do that, they would be sacrificing space on their plot, which means they're also going to slow down on how much fuel they get, so it's not like they can absolutely blow up the ecosystem. Because, like, say for example, if I were to make, like, this still isn't perfect, I still have a long way to go. But if I were to try and make, let's see here. If I were to try and make a building for Illuvium Zero for breeding, I would let you have as many of them as possible, or we can even just match the amount of breeding facilities that you would with, let's say, a materials lab. So if I'm going into a materials lab, for example, it's kind of hidden behind me. it would be 5 out of 5. So you can have up to 5 on a plot. I think that's probably a safe bet. You can go up to 5 to a plot. However, for the breeding farms, I would make it the size of the Nexus, if not bigger. Make it so that if I want to exclusively go and make my plot a breeding sanctuary, that my plot has to sacrifice a lot to make that happen. Make it as big as the Nexus, maybe even a little bit more, because that is a big building, for example. And all these random passive generators of fuel, I'm going to have to sacrifice it. And you could very well do something similar to what we see with, say, the scanners, where, let me see, where's my scanner? Do I have a scanner in this plot? Yes, I do, actually. So something similar like we would do with the scanner, where there is your effectiveness, right? Your efficiency. Make it so that you can throw the breeding sanctuary in the middle of your city, but if it's surrounded by a bunch of buildings, then the animals, creatures wouldn't like that, right? There's a reason why zoos are out in the middle of nowhere, for the most part. So, make it so that if you wanted to put breeding farms onto your base, that you can have, say, breeding farms, you could have them next to each other, but if you have them next to any industrial plants, the amount of time it takes to get an egg goes up dramatically. Let me write that down. Zero implementation. Breeding farm building the size of the Nexus or bigger. Efficiency goes down if near industrial buildings, but not other breeding farms. In terms of how many allowed, either I don't mind the idea that you're saying they're awake darkness. However, I personally feel that everybody should be allowed to play with the exact same pieces and limitations. It's just a matter of, do you have the fuel saved up to perform it? So that's why personally, I'd say max 5 farms per plot. Paid for by fuel. And then what about this, guys? The amount of fuel goes up depending by the tier. So if I'm just trying to breed a tier 0, can make it stupid cheap, like say 333. But if I'm trying to breed a tier 5, it's like 15, 15, 15. I think that's probably the best way to be able to do that, to limit mass production of rare Illuvials. I mean, Bushman, you laugh. That's basically what Palworld does, right? The Palworld's breeding system makes absolutely no freaking sense. Like, you can take 2 of the same creature, breed them together, and then get the same creature. But there are, like, cross breeds that are allowed that makes something completely random. And to a certain extent, Pokemon has this too in the form of egg groups. Like, certain water Pokemon can then go breed with other water Pokemon and get an egg of some sorts. Yeah, so paid for by fuel, but tier decides how much it costs. Say tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'd be 3, 3, 3. This puts it on line with an early games. What the heck? Give me dates, apparently. Here. 3C, 3H, 3S for the fuel types. Leave out the tier 0 land. Yeah, the freebie land, I don't think gets access to this. Very similarly to what we see with blueprints, in my opinion. Maybe even giving them one. No, but yeah, you got the bot problem. If this was just a purely player-based experience, I would say yes, let the free-to-play tier 0 plot, or the free-to-play tier 3 plot, let that, like, have one. But again, bots don't let us have nice things. Let's see. Here's, I guess, an example. 5, 5, 5. Then... 7, 7, 7. 9, 9, 9. 11, 11. This is just an example, of course, but this is just kind of like where my mind's going. And then maybe just spike tier 5, because that's where all the scariness is going to be. Maybe a system like this here. Because if I think of my tier 1 plot, 15, 15, 15, that's 45 fuel, right? So my tier 1 plot... wrong button. Let me find one of my tier 1s. My tier 1 plot at max efficiency gives me 38. So I cannot actually fund, I guess, a breeding session then every day. This would be something that I would have to save for. And I personally think that's a good thing. That's not bad. And now I have to choose. If I want to save up for my new faux egg that I want to hatch, does this mean I have to settle down on my blueprint making? Do I have to now settle down on my scans? Do I have to maybe not send any blueprints through the 0-point transducer? I mean, there's no point to do so anyway right now, but I mean, dyes are supposed to be a thing sometime in Obelisk Rising, if I recall correctly, so maybe there'll be a purpose to actually doing this at some point. But, like, this is what bottlenecks and makes a tier 1 plot feel like a proper tier 1 plot. You can do everything that a higher tier plot can do. However, if you have a higher tier plot, you can do more of it. And that is a good thing. That's going to make me think of, like, okay, at least I can do this, but it's going to take me some time. But if I wanted to do it faster, maybe I should go look at the Illuvidex for some more 0 land. Maybe I should look for a tier 2. If I were to go into a tier 2, again, say if one of my... Let's see, how much am I going to be making here? Again, I've got all of these gatherers here at 150, 50, 50, 50. So 150. So by going out of my way to then buy a bigger... plot, it means I could do much more. I can go from getting one egg, one breeding facility, and having it running every 2 days, to going to a tier 2, getting 150 fuel, which means I could put 3 breeding facilities on my tier 2 and be able to fund it if I cancel out everything else that I'm doing on my plot. If I wanted to exclusively go for breeding, no more materials labs, no more scanners, wherever the hell my scanners are on this plot, no more scanners, just breeding. I could do that. And then it's just going to go up and up and up from there, right? This isn't an artificial pigeonholing. This isn't skewing the numbers to make it more difficult artificially. This is making management tough due to having so much that you want to do on the plot. And that is a great thing. You don't feel cheap. You don't feel like you're ripped off. Or you don't feel like you're missing out or you're doing something wrong. You just have so much stuff that you want to do that you've run out of resources. What's going to suck is that, like, if you look at my fuel count right now, long-time players are going to have this banked. But it's not going to be like that forever. Once there's actually a point to doing something on Illuvium 0, and more systems similar to like this are in place, people are going to be starving for fuel. And when people are starving for fuel, they then will look into how do you get it faster? How do you get it faster? Get a bigger plot. Get a tier 3, tier 4. Maybe get a tier 5. We've heard about megacities. I've never seen one, but we've heard about megacities. Maybe that's the true magnum opus, so to speak, to getting this to work the way that you want. Now again, there is still an argument that could be made from this method. The argument with this method, of course, the lone bad, in my opinion, is that nothing is getting burned for this process. Because the Illuvials, if we were putting 2 Illuvials in there, optimally they stay alive. If this system somehow turns into put 2 Illuvials of a certain species into the breeding facility, killing them and getting 1 Illuvial back, that is stupid. I hate it. I never liked fusion to begin with, where you would do this system to evolve an Illuvial. Putting 2 of a certain Illuvial to then downgrade into the baby version and killing off the parents, to me, is stupid. Very stupid. So, if we cannot, let's see, alternative payment method. If we must burn something, there is a way that we can do this where you can breed. This is actually not a bad idea in my opinion. Let's see. Alternative method lets you breed, or lets you get eggs for Illuvials you don't own. This is the only other option I think of, and I actually kind of like this a little bit better for the sake of a completionist, for the sake of a dex filler. Is there a way that you can hatch eggs for Illuvials you do not own? It sounds stupid, but I think we have already the system already in place to do it. the blueprint system. Let's make another choice here. Do I want to save my blueprints and use them for skins? Or do I want to maybe use this blueprint for making that Illuvial? This completely circumvents evolution and fusion. But through your research facilities, you are finding blueprints that you scanned from your biodata. And of course, these are one-time use. And are not guaranteed to actually show up. This is chance-based, right? And the idea of a blueprint is that you're here to design or create something, right? So this to me is, like, honestly, a fantastic idea as well. We have the blueprint for, say, my one Scoriox. Who says that instead of calling this breeding, let this be generating a metamorphosis of sorts with a where an egg of sorts shows up in what looks like this this hydrogen storage thing. I think Mewtwo from, like, Pokemon the first movie, where it's sitting there in the tub being generated, being cloned, or just being made. I use the blueprint, I get a creature. Now, in regards to TPI, it would have to be random, I think, right? And that's something that we didn't necessarily talk about yet. Because with the parent option, it'd be TPI is a mixture of parents' genetics. But if we're doing it based specifically off of a blueprint, it canonically makes sense. Storyline makes sense as to why certain mutations, certain metamorphosis, or certain generated Illuvials might be better than others. It's based off of a blueprint, it's chance. Don't let failure getting something be the chance. Let the chance be how good that Illuvial is. So, if we must burn something, use blueprints plus fuel as the cost of generating one copy of the Illuvial blueprints are one-time use, gives purpose to biodata and research labs, or biodata, research labs, and blueprints themselves. TPI is random. And I honestly imagine Jim's kind of working in a somewhat similar way, just without the blueprints. I would argue for... Here, let's do the training gym spin-off area. Fuel as cost. Illuvial in gym cannot be used in arena or obelisk rising. This is basically how I would make it. Just make this, again, a daily cost of leveling up an Illuvial. Just keep it by tier. Don't increase the fuel by stage. Just keep it this way because the same metric still applies. This is another thing that we would want to be using our land plots for that could provide value to you, not just in game, but in real world. So the higher tier plots are going to be able to get to do more of it. And the tier 1s, the tier 2s are going to have to, or everybody is going to have to micromanage exactly how they want to utilize their plots to get the most for what they want to do. This is basically how I would handle training gyms. And I wouldn't even make these big. Like, these can be building size of converter. Yeah. So honestly, for the sake of all things Illuvium 0, I honestly think what I made as the alternative method should actually be the main method. Because I do agree, thanks to the ridiculousness we have to deal with the fact that things are Web 3 and supply is actually a factor, that some sort of cost needs to be given. Oh, this gives a... Here's another thing. Gives a purpose for actually selling blueprints. Or selling and buying blueprints. Because if you can hatch your own Illuvial by buying a blueprint off the Illuvidex, and that basically being your shot at generating a killer, or at least just getting something, and that's something that then people who hold the Illuvials themselves can take into account in their Illuvidex marketing. If a blueprint, like, these are just theoreticals. If a blueprint for, again, a foe. If a blueprint for a foe was, say, $1, but that TPI can be random, what is going to then stop somebody holding a 75 TPI foe, or even, never mind a 75 TPI, just an entry level? An entry level foe. You can then say, hey, like, I know you can buy the blueprint and take a chance on it for a random TPI, but I do have this little guy, he's TPI 30, but I can sell him to you for a couple cents, for like 80 cents. You can then start playing with the psychological side of things here. It's like, okay, you have one that's kind of like middle down the road, or a little bit lackluster, but you could just buy a blueprint and then it have like 10 TPI. So players can play around that. And again, you're still getting the Illuvial, so it's not like you're getting ripped off. But it's player choice. And in a game that was pitched to me as a player-made economy, as a player-led market, we need more things like this to cause friction. So honestly, I kind of like that. Because then, let's get into theoreticals. Let's bring our players back here. If this was our system, so because there's people out there that play Pokemon just to breed. There's people that go into Power World and immediately they never catch like a single alluvial. They only look for eggs, and they only make alluvials. They only make pals through breeding. And I know me personally, I probably have spent way more time in the breeding side of things for creature capturers than I have in story mode. So let's think about this. How would the breeder then handle this? What would it kind of look like? If they came into Illuvium and wanted to be a breeder, they would invest into Illuvium Zero Land and focus their plots on breeding farms, but due to fuel limitations, to do this as a career. Did I spell that right? I don't think so. As a carrier. Stroking out here for a minute. As a career, they would need at least tier 3 plots. Let me give myself some more room here. So there can probably be people that if they just enjoyed being a breeder and supplying people alluvials, there's a playstyle here where that can work, but they would need at least tier 3 plots to make it efficient. Which then, more value for the Illuvium 0 plots. Hell yeah. Arena players would need to reach out to breeders to get competitive alluvials. To get competitive alluvials if Illuvidex supply is low or overpriced. Competitive teams may have a designated team breeder. Like if I, for example, if a tournament's coming up in the Illuvium Arena or in Obelisk Rising's PvE in their dungeon runs, and we need to get our teams and whatnot, who says that there isn't, oh, you're looking for alluvials? Hey, Hype has a guy over here, or a guy or gal, who's been handling all of our breeding. They absolutely are killing it. You should go check in with them. Or you have freelancers. That's still totally fine. But this is a community team-based dynamic that this system would then install. So good to see you. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Breeding sounds more enjoyable than playing the video game. To some it is. I have way more fun playing Pokemon, for example, hatching eggs, than playing the stupid story mode. There is, again, people who have a lot of fun just sitting in the Pal World Breeder, playing with combinations, and doing challenges showing how much of the Pal Dex, or the Palopedia, can they fill just off of breeding. I would probably be heavily into this, being a supplier for people. I made the joke before that if gyms and if breeding was a thing, I would open up a daycare. I shit you not. I would love to be the guy that you can go to if you're missing something. The community rescue is already a bit of a hint of that. Wolverine, good to see you as well. Hope you're having a fantastic day as well. Living Dex completionists could potentially look for breeders to complete their living decks, or buy their own Illuvium Zero land and breed to help fill the gaps. What they are missing. And this would be perfect for the average player, because completionists are kind of close to general playthrough, so I argue they probably go in hand here. Where people might just want to get a tier 1 plot or a tier 2 plot just to have the option to breed their own alluvial if they wanted to. They're not as hardcore into it, so they're not going to get a 3, 4, or 5. But they'll at least get a 1 or a 2, and that is something that is value for Illuvium Zero. For crafters, if this goes in the form that Harry had mentioned before in an Obelisk Rising playthrough, or dev talk, where crafting requires lots of alluvials. Maybe crafters have access to their own plot to supply alluvials needed to craft popular gear. So let's say if there's a ranger weapon that requires an absolute ton of rip lances to potentially make the weapon, so to speak. Like, say if you're trying to make the ripple flail and you need riptors or rip lances or something like that. Maybe a crafter will then look into having an Illuvium Zero plot so that they can try and farm blueprints for Riptor, and then use those blueprints to then get more Riptor so that they can then make more gear, which they are then trading with people or using themselves. Now for exploration, what did I have up here for exploration? Finding eggs in the wild could absolutely be interesting. Potentially. Having eggs in the wild that can hatch over time through party. You would get them very, very rarely, make it a very hard to find item, but potentially be able to do it that way as well. Dungeons and raiders would then essentially copy-paste what arena players are doing, where they're going to need their own breeding farms in order to get competitive alluvials, or they're going to have to go for breeders to get them that way. And potentially, again, competitive teams might have their own breeder. For Illuvium Beyond, once again, I'm going to copy-paste from here. While I don't think there's anything that Illuvium Beyond can take advantage of in terms of like Illuvium Zero or the actual functionality of getting Beyond involved, or of the plots themselves, what I do believe should happen is an in-game achievement where if you hatch a certain amount of eggs, you can get Illuvatars that include breeding designs. So again, Monarch holding an egg, or something along those lines. Beyond can have achievements similar to titles. Like, achievements can be tied to titles as well in this instance here. We've not seen Illuvium implement this at all outside of Illuvium Beyond. just for saying and screaming like, hey, I'm a Beyond whale. I've paid an absurd amount of money into this game, and I want to show it off the title. Yeah, good for you if you enjoy that kind of stuff, by all means. But let's get some sort of achievement system in here. Like, if I hatch 20 eggs, let's see a picture of an ace coming out of an egg. Or I've hatched 50 eggs. Give me the monarch holding an egg. Give me designs. Give me achievements that are Illuvatars. I think that's how Beyond gets involved in this. And that also shows something exclusive that you could only get by playing the game. If you want a holo version of that Beyond Illuvatar, get absurd amounts of hatches in there. If I hatch 1,000 eggs, because I'm a breeder and that's what I love, I have my holo monarch holding an egg. Because people who are just playing casually are never going to hit an achievement like that. That is a beautiful way to stand out from the crowd with something that's exclusively yours, which I believe was kind of the entire point of Web3 gaming in the first place. So I think I really like that idea. Deathmatch, again, we're just going to keep this the same as it was before. It's just extra. People who are heavily into deathmatch are just getting extra Illuvials for the slaughterhouse. More utility for Illuvium 0 lands. And then as a team builder, team tester, it's very similar in nature to an arena player, where they're looking to get competitive Illuvials, I would imagine. Well, that was fun. I honestly really enjoyed this discussion. Does anybody else have any sort of other ideas that we could ponder? I've got about 5 minutes left here before I gotta call it a day. But to kind of run through the idea, the main idea, if I was to TLDR this. Let's see. What I would end up doing, my personal pick, would be that Illuvium 0 gets a facility that is for breeding. How we would handle this is, first and foremost, it would end up being a building that is basically the size of the Nexus. Make it big. Make it so that... make it big, so make it so that if you want to invest heavily into breeding farms, that you are probably going to lose some of your fuel generation in order to be able to do it. What I would then have it happen is that those breeding farms, you could limit them to 5 a plot if you would like, but I do believe that the fuel cost to the breeding itself, if you do it by tier, is going to limit the amount of breeding that can be done naturally, so you might not even necessarily need to limit the building itself. So you have the fuel cost there, make it so that the efficiency for the breeding farms go down if it's near industrial buildings. Things like your gatherers, things like your converters, fuel generators. Make it so that the efficiency goes down if it's near those buildings, because again, animals that are in containment, like things like a zoo, they don't want to be in the middle of a city. They're not going to be happy with that. And if the efficiency goes down, it means how long it takes for the egg or the hatch to show up takes longer. How long would I make it take? I would want to make it so that your the alluvial, or the way that how long it would take to get an egg or something along those lines would be anywhere between 1 hour and say 2-3 days. That way there's reason to check in to your plot multiple times a day, because you never know maybe that blueprint converted an alluvial super quickly. Or maybe you got a little bit unlucky and it took a little while. But what this isn't doing is giving you failure. I do not want a system where you pay for the fuel and then pay a blueprint and then fail and have to do it again. That feels like shit. That is a terrible system and it should not be done. I hate that the research labs and the scanners already give us that kind of system. But I digress. You pay the blueprint. You pay the fuel. You check into your breeding facilities. It gives you an egg. That egg you have to carry with you in Obelisk Rising. Its TPI, because it came from a blueprint, can be random. That way there is also still a purpose to those exclusive high TPI hunters out there that go and check every single encounter before going into it, like we would do in Overworld. And getting high TPI alluvials, putting them up onto the market. If you still wanted to get a high TPI alluvial, your best bet would still to be go pay a premium to somebody who caught it on the Illuvidex, or to that lucky son of a gun who managed to hatch it through randomness. I'd make the TPI random for breeding. This way too, if the worry part about this, if the part that people were scared about with the breeding system, was that I could take one parent that has high TPI, another parent that has high TPI, and the parents don't die, so I can just pump out endless high TPI alluvials. Screw that. Nope, I understand. In a perfect world where we're not worried about supply, then okay. If it was a single player game, something along those lines, or a Pokemon-esque, okay, that would be fine. However, there's always, of course, the what about the value of my collection QQ crying face? Well, make it random off of the blueprints. That's how I would end up doing it. This way again. Not only is there a purpose to owning Illuvium Zero land by having breeding exclusive to Illuvium Zero, but in order to do it efficiently, if you like that playstyle that much, you have to not only get lands, but you probably need a tier 3 if you want to have 5 breeding centers open, pumping out alluvials. And more love to lands, the better. Utilizes the resources in fuel. Again, you can have all the plots that you want, and you can have all the tier 1s that you want, but eventually your fuel resources are going to run dry. If I'm trying to spam out 45 fuel every single day on a tier 1 plot trying to mass breed, it's not going to happen. You only get 38 fuel a day. It's something you have to actively save for. And with this current system that we have in mind, you're burning the blueprints as well, which is, of course, a very hard resource to get. But this does allow you to get eggs for alluvials you do not own, which would help completionists. Heck, even the casual player might enjoy that. So blueprints plus fuel is the cost of generating one copy. Again, blueprints, one-time use. Actually gives purpose to biodata, research labs, and the blueprints themselves, because right now we can't do literally anything with any of it that actually means anything. Again, make the TPI random, and then this also gives a purpose for actually buying and selling the blueprints. Because if you're just there to try and complete your Illuvidex, maybe it is worth it to just buy a $1 blueprint of the alluvial that you need. But at the same time, if you're going for high TPI, your best bet is still to go buy it directly from somebody off the Illuvidex, unless you really want to gamble it a little bit. Let's say Phosphorus is borderline extinct, and the only ones on the Illuvidex is like a couple $100. Say $200-300. I need a high TPI phosphorus, I can go buy it directly. Or maybe I put $50 of blueprints, phosphorus blueprints, into my plots over time, and maybe I get lucky and make one myself. Then the blueprint prices, if they see that the market is fluctuating like that, that can be skewed and whatnot and adjusted as well. I think it genuinely adds a layer to Illuvium that a lot of us had pictured in our head that just has not happened. And it can very well affect every type of player. So let me see if I can disappear here for just a second. Again, this is the system. I'm literally going to screenshot this and send this shit to Perry right now. and other Illuvium staff. We literally, as a community here together, just did a full-on theory craft as to how this could be implemented. Again, I don't know anything about the tech side of things or what's actually possible. However, I feel like we did a good job building this to where no new systems need to be made. We already have the option of gaining and burning blueprints. We already have the ideas of a building running off a timer. I don't know if there's actually anything that would be needing of heavy development that would make a huge impact into the value of Illuvium 0. And then just to rub it in, because we're honestly all sick of waiting for this, the fact that training gyms have still been teased for at least a year at this point and have not shown up, even though there is an active player base that would be dying to use them right now, is absolutely ridiculous. So training gyms in Illuvium 0, just give us a building the size of a converter. Have the fuel cost be based by every single day, based off of the tier. Let us level up those damn Illuvials on our plots. 2 changes that I would argue do not need much development. Could put an absolute incredible breath of life into Illuvium 0. And not only make it more interesting to actually play, changing the game from a chore that we do because we feel like we have to it being fun and enjoyable. Like, if I wanted to be a breeder in Illuvium, I might not ever have to touch Arena. I might not even ever have to touch Obelisk Rising. I could potentially have my entire Illuvium career being played in Illuvium 0. If that was the option, I so choose. But having those things to do, the gyms, the breeding, onto Illuvium 0 plots, bring attention to Illuvium 0 plots for every player of many types to actually want to purchase. And then for those that, again, want to all in, they have to look into maximum efficiency, which means they need bigger tier plots. And these are all systems that I can't see being very difficult to implement. It would be more so of they don't want us to have this right now, rather than they can't. Us as a community, literally done the brainstorming for you. I'm not going to sit here and say that we have every single scenario talked about. We don't know, of course, exactly what's going on behind the scenes. There could be many things, I'm sure, that we've not been able to talk about. However, on a strictly surface level basis, and relatively in-depth level too, I feel like we have a pretty sick system here that allows for breeding and for training gyms to be implemented into the game without causing an endless loop and major impact into the Illuvium ecosystem, while also making it very fun. Even if this is just a matter of burn fuel, burn blueprint, and wait for the timer. That is the anticipation of getting that egg, the anticipation of my Illuvial being leveled up, is enough to make me happy and excited. And I'm sure there are many others here that feel the exact same way. I'm very excited at the fact that Illuvium has been taking more care into Arena, which was one of the titles I'd argue has been neglected for over a year. And I'm very, very thankful about that. But Illuvium 0 has been neglected even longer and even harder than Arena. And these two systems, and if implemented, would make a night and day difference. And nowhere in this demonstration have I ever even talked about anything play to earn. Like, I talked about marketing side of things with the Illuvidex, so I guess maybe, okay, never mind. Maybe we kind of touched on it a little bit. But this all was made, this entire idea was made with the thought of making Illuvium 0 fun and your entire Illuvium experience fun. Not making money. But yet we kept the ecosystem in mind. So Illuvium, please. It'd be amazing if somehow this was able to come around sometime soon. At least the breeding side of things, I get that we're going to need to wait for Obelisk Rising for. That makes sense to me. The gyms do not need to wait. This should be pretty easy peasy. So please, let's make 0 awesome. Let's make Illuvium awesome. For every play. Not a play to earn cesspool, but a fun creature capture in a time where alternative creature capture games on Pokemon are starting to pop off. Our World already got the ball rolling, but they don't have an MMO. They don't have ownership. If anything, it's kind of a single-player game. I know there's multiplayer elements, but you can somewhat play together, but you can't do much together. Illuvium, as this entire universe, has such a perfect opportunity here to strike a genre that's been dying to be made. Palworld announced that they're doing an MMO of sorts, but it's only for phone. We can hit everything. So that's what I'm hoping. I still have big hopes. Even in a time where it's very easy to be discouraged, there's still so much that we can do. But I will be wrapping things up here for today. Big thank you to everybody that got involved in the discussion. Thank you to everybody just tuning in and listening to me yap about a theoretical game mode that isn't even necessarily announced yet in Illuvium 0, of course. I'm absolutely looking forward to some more streams here with all of yous, and I hope that everybody can get some ideas, because I still think this would be very, very, very cool. But still, play to earn shouldn't fade away in Web3 games, and that's the thing. Like, with the system that I was talking about, for those that really want to look for it, there could be systems that same system could still work for that. It was built for fun But how hard you take it, how heavily you take it to potentially make it some sort of earning thing, could be done. Remember how I was saying that, say, competitive teams for Arena and Obelisk Rising might need to have a career breeder to make their Illuvials? Or just a career breeder in general. Tournament comes around, and all of a sudden you happen to be holding a bunch of the Illuvials that you've made that are competitively viable? It can still be there without being the main focus. And that's the one thing. Like, I don't want to say that I'm anti-play to earn. I'm anti-play to earn being the reason you're playing the game. The idea that people play the game specifically for money while not having fun is absolutely absurd to me. So if we can make a game system that is naturally fun, but if I put my heart and soul and maybe even my money a little bit into it, maybe I can find a return. So that is kind of where my mindset is at here with breeding and even trading gyms to an extent. But I'll be calling it a day here. My son has a soccer game in like 30 minutes, so I got to get moving. But I do also want to say, of course, one more time, big thank you. And of course, that is not it in regards to the streams for this week. I'm just getting started here. We're going to have a pretty fun stream tomorrow, as we will be going through the Illuvium Arena. First off, we did just get our new patch, so I do want to play around with it and see what we can do. But I'm also adding a little bit of a gimmick or a little bit of a stipulation to my time in the arena tomorrow. What is the cheapest or most inexpensive team that I can win with in Illuvium Arena? I'm trying to basically I'm trying to make a team that does not go any higher than tier 3 and see if I can make some rating just off of that to kind of give an experience of what a newcomer coming in, if they just have a couple of the common Illuvials and like the uncommons with the tier 3s. If that's all I have, can I still compete? I want to try it for myself tomorrow during stream. But that will be it for now. Once again, massive thank you to everybody tuning in. If you happen to have been new here, make sure you drop a sub and a like onto the channel on the way out, because, of course, I am trying my damnedest to do exclusively Illuvium and build this channel. I'm having an absolute blast doing it, and as long as I'm still having fun, I'll keep going. But until next time, whether it be in the deathmatch pit or the arena, good luck in your matches, good luck on your training ranger. I'll see you tomorrow for some more Illuvium.